Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for this opportunity to share some ideas with you. Most of us here were born in a different world, with planes full of smoke, or looking for a payphone somewhere to talk to your mom. Right? This has changed. This has changed in a radical way. A video conference, facial recognition, or even a smartphone. It all seemed like looking something from science fiction only a few years ago. But reality is that today, even a farmer on a remote rural community in a developing country owns, in his own pocket, more technology and more communication power than maybe the NASA in the 80s. Nobody discusses that we are living a change of era, a new economic and social revolution. Massive migration, global warming, jobs that disappear, industries that need to adapt, education systems that become obsolete, and new ways of interaction between us. All these facts have also increased the lack of trust in governments. This may look like a crisis for many. It may feel like being trapped between an old and a new world. But we all know what crisis means. And the Japanese, they have known it for centuries. It is even a part of their language. They describe crisis with two words, with two signs: risk and opportunity. Great risk, of course, if you don't adapt and evolve. Just like Darwin saw it when he went to Ecuador, to the Galapagos Islands, almost 2 centuries ago. But also opportunities, like never seen before, for those who are willing to be one step forward. It is the natural selection theory, with the big difference that it is our responsibility that no one is left behind. This forum's topics are diplomacy, dialogue, and diversity. And let's start with the latter, with diversity. This is a diverse world. I mean, look at me. I am almost as diverse as you can get. I'm the President of Ecuador. I have a German name and an Arabic face. So I represent a country that holds 10% of the world's biodiversity in only 0.02% of its surface. And it is also home of many different cultures, languages, and ethnicities. But no matter how diverse we are, the challenges that our planet faces affect us all. That's why we must work together. And the only starting point will always be dialogue. For dialogue to get somewhere, we need to have an education that is up to date. Radicalism and dogmatism are barriers that will never allow dialogue between diverse people to succeed. We need to understand 3 principles of dialogue if we want dialogue to succeed. Radical is the enemy of rational, that to yield is not to lose, and that there are no small agreements, because any agreement is a starting point. So education, as always, plays a key role, but more important than ever before. First, we need to know that to indoctrinate is not to educate. Indoctrination is putting a student in a small, dark box. Education, it's opening that box's windows and doors and giving him wings. Education today demands almost no memory training. We remember what we like. A lot of critical thinking, but most of all, problem-solving skills, or as we now call them, project-based learning. We need to reinforce education in values and also pride in our cultural heritage. A person with strong values and clear cultural identity is a person that will always be self-confident. And a self-confident person cannot be guided by propaganda or indoctrination. That's a person that is going to take and make the right decisions. And he's going also to be able to evaluate and adapt to changes. This is no scientific proven theory, but pragmatism brought to itself. I have seen it myself. You may all know that the world was shaken by violent protests, and recently we also had our share in Ecuador. After eliminating fuel subsidies, we faced violent protests. Some of the rural indigenous communities went into our capital, and for over a week, they chaotized the city. During this difficult time, I personally approached the protesters, trying to find answers. And so I went into the communities and started, in these modern times of social media and communication started with something that is complicated sometimes, but direct dialogues. These are communities in which by investing in their development, we have achieved a reduction of poverty of 5% only this year. And the government's proposal as compensation for the elimination of fuel subsidies was an increase on direct money transfers and the reinforcement of the investment in this area's development. But the message did not come through. And when I asked them how this decision had affected them so much that they acted so violently against it, everything I heard just showed me more clearly what our next great challenge is, and it is communication. And I want to take a minute to go into this subject, because in the last few years, communication must be the area that has changed the most. I have a traditional media background. I was a radio broadcaster for over a decade. The evolution of communication has certainly brought us closer. No discussion there. It has achieved the unthinkable. Today, anyone owns, for a few $100s, a complete broadcast facility right here in the form of a smartphone. And it always can become an immediate media outlet. But this amazing tool that can be used for good can also do the opposite. Our biggest issue during this time of protest in Ecuador was fake news. It is the wealthy who benefit the most from fuel subsidies. This policy in Ecuador is over 45 years old, and it has cost us as a country over $100 billion. It makes no social, no environmental, and no economic sense. And those who defended it, those who wanted us to keep that policy, were the ones that had been the most affected by it. They own no cars, and they don't use fuel for their agricultural activities because they irrigate by gravity. So when I asked them, why were they on the streets? What I heard the most was fake news. Fake news, what is this? These are pseudo-journalistic contents that try to appeal to our prejudices. People who use them study population psychology first, and then feed them with what they want to hear. In our case, all this news was related to one of the biggest difficulties we face in the region, Venezuelan migration. It's difficult as a country to receive 500,000 migrants. We are a 17 million population. Venezuela has had around 6 million migrants. We have 500,000 of them only in less than 2 years. So of course it creates a certain complicated social environment. And any news that would fit that prejudice you have with migration would certainly anger you. So they managed to make people believe that we as government were giving money to every migrant that came into Ecuador. And they felt that it was unfair that we eliminated subsidies but gave money to foreigners. That's why they were protesting. And of course, this was a lie. But lies today have gained traction in the form of fake news, and they are weakening the truth. So the truth needs to go on the offensive, or it would lose the battle. Traditional media feels threatened by new media, and I think this is the greatest opportunity to make a difference with credibility. There is nothing more valuable in this world of massive amounts of information than a credible source. And leaders, people like us who have the chance to serve, should not only rely on social media. We should also reinforce direct dialogues, like the ones you saw there, with empathy and transparency, of course. The result of these dialogues for us was peace. And yeah. Not many countries in the region can say that today. That's why I really appreciate the power of dialogue. And a more direct way of working with these communities into solving their problems. Sorry. Well-being and peace can only be achieved through real communication. Multilateralism today is more necessary than ever. It just needs to have clearer goals and efficient work. Less talking, more doing. So what's the opportunity? We heard the risk. Today, developing countries have a giant opportunity. We all do. We can enter this new era directly. We can make a giant leap because the immense economic barriers that represented prior industrial revolutions, like a huge nuclear power plant, or even in business, an amazing but very expensive department store. These are all things of the past. That means with little effort, a lot of innovation, a lot of creativity, we can all join the future, the present actually. The necessary tools needed to be a part of this new era are accessible to almost anyone. Information about anything is available to anyone. If you want, you can learn a language or go to a great university without leaving your home. Using these tools to fight inequality inside and outside our countries, that's our major challenge. The opportunities are there for us, working together more than ever, using education and communication with the main purpose of leaving this world much better than we found it when we were born. Thank you very much.